The alien empress hurled a human into the beast pit, then froze in disbelief when he didn't flinch. Terran hadn't known exactly what to expect when the Zalari patrol nabbed him off his ship. Torture? Sure. Starvation? Very possible. Instant disintegration? Would have made sense. But being marched into a coliseum crammed with thousands of screeching alien spectators pumped on alien booze and burnt meat smoke? That was new. The atmosphere was electric. Acrid metal, scorched mushroom protein, and stale terror clogged the air. Overhead, neon glyphs danced across a giant holographic curve, converting the frenzied chants into various galactic dialects, including Earth Standard. Got the Terran, it read cheerfully. Terran squinted. Nice. Bet you all do weddings too, huh? 2 guards stalked beside him, each an 8-foot man thing wrapped in glinting chitin. Their breath reeked like melted batteries. One jabbed him in the ribs with a charged baton. Silence, mammal. It hissed. Terran winced. Wow. Back on Earth we call that dental malpractice. The crowd shrieked as his chains dragged melodramatically across the floor. Then he spotted her, the Empress, seated in a floating obsidian platform, legs crossed like she was bored at brunch. Virelia of Zealer Prime, monarch of 6 planetary zones, ruler of the Karth cluster, and chief shareholder in the Valtrex mining syndicate. She looked almost human. 2 eyes, symmetrical limbs, the usual layout. But her ears were long, blade-like, and twitched with subtle judgment. She wore a gown made from reactive silk laced with nanostar particles. Her crown? A rotating halo of plasma shards that buzzed like bees with anger management issues. Okay, Terran thought. She's got presence. You, her voice boomed from levitating speakers, have mocked our language, sullied our rights, and made crude remarks about my ancestral diadem. She leaned forward. You called it a space bottle opener. In my defense, Terran said, smiling, it really looks like one. I'm still kind of disappointed it doesn't open soda. A ripple moved through the arena. The Empress paused for exactly 1 dramatic second. Release him to the Varnak. Roars of excitement filled the air. The ground below Terran lit up, and a massive circular hatch creaked open. The Varnak weren't lions. They were bioforged weapons of war, cooked up in Zalari genetics labs. Armor-plated muscles, heat-reactive skin that shimmered like mood rings, and twin rows of fangs glowing with plasma. 3 emerged, hulking, golden-eyed, and tail thrashing like they were warming up for carnage. Oh, great, Terran muttered. Killer cats. Nothing screams fair trial like sci-fi jungle cats with built-in flamethrowers. A cracked spear clattered at his feet. Useless. Terran picked it up anyway. He faced the nearest beast and, without missing a beat, said, Hey, Fluffy, maybe let's not do something we'll both regret. Huh. The crowd hushed. The first Varnak padded forward and sat, like a giant furry dog waiting for a treat. Terran blinked. Did I just get adopted? The arena was silent. The Empress's lip twitched, not quite a smile. Terran, seizing the moment, turned to the audience and threw up his arms. Ladies, gentle species, and assorted slimy appendages. This is how you train your murder kitten. The Colosseum exploded. Some laughed, some booed, some just stared confused. The other 2 Varnak sniffed cautiously at him, then flanked his sides and crouched protective. Empress Virelia narrowed her eyes. This was supposed to be swift and violent. A message. Instead, she got a comedian, a man who charmed monsters, and for the first time in ages, she felt something unfamiliar. Not irritation, not fury, curiosity. Terran had always claimed that survival was a blend of luck, charm, and pretending you had a plan. As he leaned casually against one of the massive beasts, whom he now dubbed Snugglechalk, he wondered how long he could keep up the act before someone sent a laser through his spine. Snugglechalk purred. If you could call the thunderous bassquake of a deaf lion's affection a purr. Audience members visibly shivered. One fainted. The other 2 Varnak pressed closer, protectively. Terran scratched behind one's ear. Who's a good genocide kitty? You are. Yes, you are. Up in her throne, the Empress looked like she'd bitten into something sour. Behind her, various nobles murmured, scandalized. One advisor, a wrinkled amphibian named Glint, leaned in. Majesty, perhaps the Terran is excreting some kind of pheromone. Their kind are infamous for odor-based psychological warfare. Virelia didn't blink. That's not sweat. That's charisma. Glint gasped. Witchcraft. Down below, Terran dusted off his shirt. So what's next, your luminance? Shark Tank with laser mods? Jacuzzi full of psychic eels? I'm just hoping for snacks at this point. The crowd responded in confusion, especially at the word snacks. Virelia lifted a hand. Silence fell. Return him to holding. Terran patted Snugglechonk. Catch you later, Fuzzlord. His cell wasn't your standard dungeon. It was disturbingly clean. Silver walls, sterilization mist, and an actual mattress. The guards outside didn't move, didn't blink, and may have been robots reprogrammed for grumpiness. He paced, muttering. Okay, Terran, you've made it through asteroid storms, Venusian customs, and that time with the Mimic Queen on Farlax 3. You got this. A small orb drone buzzed silently in the corner, blinking red. Hey, Wally's creepy cousin, Terran said. Got snacks? No, just ominous surveillance? Cool. To his surprise, it zipped away. In a controlled chamber laced with shimmering data streams, Empress Virelia watched the footage, one eyebrow raised. She should have vaporized him hours ago. Yet here she was, watching him like a soap opera fan with popcorn. Maybe, she said mostly to herself, he's more than just a nuisance. Glint clicked his claws. Dissection, perhaps? Virelia waved him off. I've seen how he handles pressure. Now I want to see what he does with freedom. That night, Terran's door slid open. 2 guards entered with a third figure, a Zalari woman, clad in silk embedded with neural lights. Her long ears shimmered with silver threads. You've been summoned, she said flatly. Terran tilted his head. So, execution, ritual duel, or surprise root canal? Dinner. Terran blinked. Okay, that's honestly the most terrifying option. As he was led through gleaming crystalline halls, his brain spun. He'd survived alien lions, earned applause, and now he was getting a dinner invitation from a monarch who could casually nuke him mid-dessert. He was either deeply screwed or at the start of something very strange. He'd always liked strange. The Empress's dining room was a room. It was a dimensional pocket of luxury. Stars shimmered overhead, live projections from telescopes that spanned galaxies. The dining table, a solid slab of crystallized starwood. The cutlery, forged from neutron alloys, probably, Terran assumed. Some of it looked sharp enough to defend a small planet. 2 guards escorted him in, glaring like their face settings were stuck on disgusted. Terran straightened his new tunic. It smelled like burnt laundry and gave a deep bow worthy of interstellar melodrama. Your luminousness, highness of highs, madam of magnificent ears, he said, grinning. You called? Empress Virelia sat at the far end of the table, her back straight, her expression carved in stone. Her blade-like ears twitched faintly, maybe signaling a private thought. Or maybe they were just syncing with an invisible frequency no one else could hear. Her skin shimmered subtly under the ambient starlight, that same Zalari bioadaptive glow flickering between slate gray and glacial blue. Mood-based pigmentation. Right now, somewhere between intrigued and ready to erase an entire city. Sit, Terran, she commanded, nodding toward the chair nearest her. Terran looked down the absurdly long table that could host a small military parade. Usually when someone says sit close, we don't need a transport shuttle to close the gap. I did not summon you for your humor. Obviously not, he replied, sliding into seat. You wanted to bask in my fashion sense and reflect on my charming refusal to be digested by mutant death cats. Also, I do a decent impression of a panicking diplomat. A serving drone zipped in, setting down a variety of alien cuisine. Some of it glowed, some hissed, and at least one plate blinked. Literally. Terran eyed the blinking one suspiciously. Is this dinner supposed to look at me? A delicacy, Virelia said without blinking, harvested from Nkai satellite colonies. Its flavor sharpens with self-awareness. Terran leaned back slightly. Cool. I usually prefer my meals to be emotionally distant. And there it was, a flicker of amusement, a brief, wicked curve of her lips, gone as fast as it came. But there, you interest me, Terran of soul, she said, tone shifting. You don't kneel. You don't scream. You pacify apex predators and toss jokes at power like they're pebbles. He lifted a translucent goblet filled with swirling nebula-like liquid, gave it a cautious sniff, smelled like rain and static. Or bravery. Hard to say. I could say the same about you, he replied, although I haven't had the pleasure of throwing you into a pit yet. She tilted her head, studied him like a glitch in the Matrix. Her voice had that thread of curiosity now, something unguarded. What do you want, human? He looked up at the holographic constellations hovering overhead, swirling slowly in real time. Honestly, a quiet place to sleep, a strong drink, and a full day without someone trying to stab me with glowing metal. Long term, I'd like to know why your empire thinks every planet it meets is a nail for its very shiny hammer. Order demands compliance, she said. Automatic. Sure, he nodded. But maybe there are ways to build order that don't involve stepping on necks. A quiet beat passed. Stars shimmered above. One of the appetizers on his plate exhaled its last breath and went limp. Virelia exhaled. Perhaps the beasts weren't enough. Terran smirked. Is that a death threat or a compliment? She didn't answer. But this time, when she looked at him, her eyes held something new. No longer just disdain or curiosity. Interest. Real, complicated interest. Terran raised his glass. To strange meals with even stranger hosts. She mirrored the gesture, to Terrans who refused to fold. Later, as Terran wandered the halls of the palace, he was increasingly convinced the place wasn't designed. It was grown, tested, and possibly high on hallucinogens. Hallways twisted subtly when his back was turned. Rooms morphed. One door led to a zero-gravity garden, another to a room full of whispering statues that might have been alive. His guide today was Fentrix, 8, a protocol drone built in the style of a humorless librarian. If a filing cabinet had anxiety and a doctor in etiquette, it would be Fentrix. Please refrain from touching the corridor foliage. The bot buzzed. It is mildly sentient and extremely passive-aggressive. Learned that the hard way, Terran muttered. It dumped me last night. Fentrix ignored him, of course, and led him onward. They were en route to something called the Royal Science Spire, a fancy name for what Terran assumed would contain either doomsday weapons or espresso machines so complicated they'd achieved sentience. As they walked, the walls gradually turned transparent, revealing labs filled with strange researchers, some with 6 arms, some with no faces, arguing in melodic trills or shaping theoretical matter with what looked like sarcastic tongs. Can we skip the part where someone tries to dissect my brain again? Terran asked. Already told Her Majesty. It's normal size, and no, it doesn't glow. Fentrix said nothing, but radiated disdain so strongly Terran felt it in his bones. They reached a circular chamber. The doors hissed open with all the ominous grace of a trap being sprung. Inside, the Empress waited, cloaked in a living garment of shimmering circuits that rippled despite the still air. Terran, she said without looking, come, I want to show you something. That line never ends in a hug, he said, stepping inside. A nearby projection simulated a star collapsing into itself, then replayed it with a different color scheme and what sounded like a jazz remix. She keyed in a command. The projection shifted. Earth appeared in the center of the room, spinning blue and fragile, encircled by glowing red fleet markers. Terran's heart skipped. That's a war fleet, he muttered. Virelia's voice softened. Approved 2 cycles ago by the High Conclave. They fear your species disrupts galactic balance. We're unstable. Primitive. Yeah, I've read the Yelp reviews. But we make solid pizza. She didn't laugh. I opposed it. But I am not the whole empire. So this is a preview of my planet's last days? No, she said, turning to face him. This is the moment I show you the edge of a line I may not be able to hold. Terran folded his arms. And what? You think I could do something about it? I think, she replied, that your refusal to break changed things. That pit wasn't your end. It might have been your beginning. She paused, ears twitching as though catching whispers he'd never hear. You've stirred factions. Someone you studied. Others think you're a threat. Charming either way. But me, she said, stepping closer. I think you're a lever. Taryn blinked. Like the kind that flushes things? No, she said, rolling her eyes. The kind that moves the world. His courage had disrupted protocol. That was power. And if she could show more of him to the conclave, maybe, just maybe, they'd hesitate again. So what, he said. You want me to inspire them? Not perform, she said. Just exist. Loudly. Humanly. Ideally with fewer jokes. No guarantees. They stood there, Earth floating between them, a fragile jewel in a sea of threats. You might still toss me back to the pit, he said. Possibly, she admitted. Or I might offer you a seat beside me when the conclave meets. Queen's pet or Queen's problem. He scratched his chin. Better make sure I'm unforgettable then. She turned, her words light but deliberate. You already are. Now, wearing the ceremonial robes of foreign dignitary, Taryn had one overwhelming conclusion. The designer hated pants. The material shifted with mood, which felt unfair considering Taryn's default state was perpetually confused. Currently, his robes pulsed with uncertain violet and bitter orange, like a disco on the verge of tears. Try to look somewhat official, Fentrix buzzed, orbiting him like a judgmental satellite, assigned as his image consultant. The bot seemed perpetually disappointed in humanity's lack of grace. I am dignified, Taryn said, striking what he believed was a heroic pose, chin raised, foot forward. You look like you're mid-cramp, the bot replied. Together, they approached the Grand Assembly spire, an amphitheater carved into the palace's upper tier, suspended above the clouds. Energy currents shimmered around it like sentient auroras. Every seat was filled. Aristocrats, diplomats, creatures sculpted from stardust and rumor. Virelia had chosen to present Taryn not as a captive, not even as a curiosity, but as a symbol, a political wild card. And Taryn knew exactly what that meant. A bet with a pulse. Taryn's appearance in the Grand Assembly wasn't just symbolic. It was a disruption, a gauntlet thrown into centuries of polished etiquette. Reactions hit fast. Some delegates looked on with curiosity. A few chuckled politely. Most, however, reacted with thin-lipped distaste, like someone had tracked mud into a gallery of priceless thought sculptures. I feel like a guy who brought a kazoo to a galactic opera, Taryn muttered under his breath. Please refrain from speaking. Fentrix, 8 buzzed beside him. Your idioms are highly volatile and could destabilize diplomatic chemistry. Then Empress Virelia arrived. The chamber fell silent the moment she entered. Her robe, woven plasma, alive with flickers of starlight, floated behind her like a second consciousness. Silver fractal adornments shimmered from her elongated ears, emitting subharmonic tones that seemed to vibrate with meaning. She didn't walk. She glided, like gravity bowed for her. She stepped onto the central platform, her gaze sweeping the vast chamber before resting briefly on Taryn. It wasn't kindness or hostility. It was calculation. A question dressed as curiosity. Taryn straightened, resisting the urge to wave. Honored envoys of the outer systems, she began, her voice sharp and clear without tech assistance. We gathered to address a question not of species, but of individual anomaly. Taryn of soul. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, great. I've been promoted to anomaly. A few heads turned. One delegate looked offended. Another looked intrigued. He was cast into our arena, Virelia continued, not as punishment, but as pageantry. He was meant to perish. Instead, he disrupted everything: fear, formality, expectation. Some call it survival, others instinct. I propose something else. She shifted slightly. A beam of light emerged beside Taryn, flickering through holographic memories. The arena, the beasts. The moment his hand rested on the head of a creature bred from massacre. The silence of the crowd. His ridiculous, offhand remark that had broken tension like glass. Even Taryn, who had lived it, felt a chill seeing it slowed down and replayed like legend. The Terran spirit, Varelia said, may be unrefined, but it is undeniable. If one can disrupt our assumptions, what of many? A murmur swept the amphitheater. Unease, curiosity, suspicion. Terran leaned toward Fentrix. Should I say something? I've got a killer bit about lions and democracy. No, Fentrix whispered. Absolutely not. The Empress turned toward him. Terran of soul, do you now understand what you are? He considered. I think so. Either the spark of something new, or the galaxy's most sarcastic mascot. A few scattered chuckles broke the tension. Varelia's lip twitched, almost a smile. Then tread carefully, she said. This stage is thinner than you know. I was hoping for a green room and some snacks. The chamber dimmed as she raised her hand. The vote to delay assault operations against Earth, pending further observation, begins now. The air filled with sound, notes of crystal, layered tones cast via sonic frequencies. A language made of resonance and decision. Terran watched the Empress. What do you think my odds are? She didn't look away from the sound. That depends, she said, on how well you keep surviving lions. He smirked. Good thing I like cats. She turned to him, serious now. Excellent, because this hall is full of them. Terran never imagined he'd end up center stage in a floating platform above the capital of Virex Prime, facing a crowd of 10,000 galactic leaders, half of whom still might want to dissect him. Yet here he was, under spotlights brighter than any sun, with the palace spires behind him glittering like frozen storms. Shards of memory, confetti encoded with his exploits, floated around him. One showed him dodging plasma fire. Another caught him mid-sneeze onto a diplomatic jellyfish. A third, regrettably, played footage of his tragic first encounter with alien toothpaste, which had foamed upward and screamed. But the cheers were real. So was the treaty. Empress Varelia stood at his side, her voice having just echoed through hundreds of systems, announcing the suspension of military action against Earth and the opening of diplomatic channels. It was tradition, apparently, to seal such declarations with a flourish. In this case, that flourish was Terran, waving a peace flag made of upcycled battle robes while riding a giant lion beast named Muffin. I can't believe this is happening, he muttered, steering Muffin, who had locked eyes on something suspicious. Possibly a drone, possibly a sentient dust cloud. You've done worse, Varelia said beside him. You once tried to high-five a security turret. It looked like it wanted one. It exploded. It was a very enthusiastic high-five. She didn't smile, but her eyes flickered. That was her tell. Terran had learned to read it. Something had changed in her. The sharp authority was still there, but now softened, like she found a purpose beyond control. She'd thrown him into chaos. Now she stood beside him in peace. Terran, for his part, wasn't the same smart-mouth survivor who'd bluffed his way through near death. He'd stood before judges, warriors, ideologies, and somehow he hadn't lost his voice or his ridiculous optimism. So, he said, after this, can I retire and start a smoothie bar? You are currently recognized as a galactic envoy of resilience, she replied dryly, watching as another holographic shard showed him doing a backward somersault over a snarling reptilian beast. But perhaps a smoothie bar, if it's themed, could be acceptable. Oh, totally. Ceasefire citrus. Galactic grape-off. Martian mango mediation. That last one sounds like a bomb. Exactly. It's refreshing and emotionally explosive. As the platform drifted back toward the palace, tethered by glowing ion thread cables, Terran dismounted with only minor drama. His robe caught on Muffin's horn. He stumbled, regained composure, turned to face the Empress again. So what now? You go back to ruling an empire. I go home. Try to explain this to my mother. She will not believe it. She didn't believe I once lost a toaster in the bathtub. This will be a tough sell. Varelia tilted her head, considering. You could stay, she said. Serve as ambassador. A bridge. Terran blinked. You want me to be the bridge? You've heard me talk, right? You soothe the war beast. disarm the Senate with humor, and turn an execution into an alliance. You've become more, not someone else. Just more. He hesitated. A few months ago, he was just a guy with a smart mouth in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, he was at the center of something impossible. Well, he said, if the job comes with hazard pay and a robe that doesn't make me look like Disco died on me, I'll have the tailors draft something less emotionally unstable. They stood there, side by side, overlooking stars that stretched beyond sight. Peace, fragile and flickering, pulsed like a heartbeat in the dark. Just one condition, she added. Oh, you're banned from naming more creatures. What? But Muffin is a classic. She's a genetically modified apex predator. She's also a snuggled tank when you scratch behind her ears. Virelia sighed. Terrans, she muttered. Aliens. Terran grinned. And together, they stepped into a future neither of them had seen coming, but one they'd somehow shaped. With wit, with wonder, and a little bit of lion fur still stuck in Terran's boot.